Yes guys, my name's Brad, welcome back to the channel. It's Saturday morning, which means of course it's another match day for Sheffield United as they take on West Brom. And as always, going to take a look at the 4-1 player to watch out for on my starting lineup and prediction. First of all, just want to say thank you for the support so far on the channel, it's been brilliant. If you're not subscribed or you're not liking the videos, what are you waiting for? Go and do it. I greatly appreciate every subscriber, every follower on Instagram, every follower on TikTok. Of course, eventually I'm trying to make this my job, so every follower and subscriber along the way is greatly appreciated. Of course, last time out for Sheffield United was a 2-0 away victory at QPR, but the big news coming out before that QPR game is that Michael Cooper is out with an injury for the rest of the season, which means for the remainder of the season it's most likely Adam Davies in the net. I would like to see young Luke Faxon get a chance in net, but I think for now it is Adam Davies, maybe towards the last few games when we've not got anything to play for. Of course, there were some standout performers against QPR such as Peck, Callum and Tyrese Campbell. Let's talk about City Peck first because he's growing in confidence game by game, he's getting better every week, and we'll have a real task on our hands to try and keep hold of him this summer, I reckon. Of course, Callum with another brilliant performance, takes him to 9 goals, 5 assists with that goal last weekend. And of course for Tyrese Campbell, he hadn't scored since November, he broke his goal drought. And it wasn't a bad goal either, was it, to break that drought? And overall it was a comfortable 2-0 win away from home, another win to the tally. And like I've mentioned before, we're not going to get playoffs, you try and finish on as many points as possible, high up as possible. And then we just need to build towards next season in the summer, of course, try and get automatics or the playoffs at least. And of course next season for the playoffs you only need to finish 8th, so I suppose there's that as well. I've shared my thoughts on this playoff expansion on here and on TikTok, so if you want to hear my thoughts on it, go and check them out. Right, let's have a look at some form then, shall we? Of course, starting with the home team, Sheffield United, of course 3 wins in the last 5. And I've got to say, solid form considering them 2 losses are to Middlesbrough and Coventry, the top 2 currently. Of course, wins to Portsmouth and QPR away from home, and that derby win to Sheffield Wednesday at home. And them 2 home defeats to Middlesbrough and Coventry are the only 2 times we've lost at home since the start of November. Of course, them top 2 are a standout, but we're pretty decent at home otherwise. Of course, it's a weird one for us now because we've not got really anything to play for, we're not going to get playoffs. Whereas for West Brom, every 3 points is vital, they're fighting for the lives at the bottom of the table. So it's interesting when you approach a game like this when you've not really got anything to play for. Of course, looking at West Brom now, their last 5 of course isn't great viewing. It's not awful considering they've drawn 3, but I mean they've lost 2, they've not won since December. And I mean it is relegation form at its finest, isn't it? And especially that last game, that relegation 6-pointer against Oxford away. I mean, come on, you need to be getting at least a point there, if not all 3 against a team like Oxford. Of course, they're sitting 22nd, only 1 point above Leicester, only 3 points above Oxford now. So they're very much in the midst of relegation, they need to get points as soon as possible. Of course, it's like Eric Ramsey, after about 8 or 9 games in charge, no wins at all. And like I mentioned, they're keeping James Morrison on till the end of the season as an interim. But I am surprised they've not gone for a firefight because they need someone to save them from this mess. Because they are very much a sinking ship and they need something to turn it around massively. Of course, to lose to Coventry is no surprise, that one's fair enough. But to draw to Charlton and lose to Oxford, you need to win in at least one, if not both of them, if you want to stay up. And like I mentioned, the only way they're going at the moment is down, there's no sign of staying up. Now it's time to move on to one player from each team you should be looking out for, starting with Sheffield United. For the Blades, I'm going for Callum, of course he's had a brilliant season, 9 goals, 5 assists, 16 goal involvements all in all. And he's having an absolutely phenomenal season, being one of our best players this year. And I've got to say the main difference between him last year and this year is the goal involvements. Last year was solid but wasn't getting goals or assists. And I want to highlight some of his key stats now because some are unbelievable. For expected goals, he's in the 98th percentile compared to other attacking midfielders and wingers. And that's made even better by the fact he's in the 99th percentile for non-penalty XG. He has a high volume of shots, of course 90th percentile in shots and shots on target. And of course them 9 goals puts him near the top of the scoring chart, never mind just midfielders and wingers. Moving on to passing now, of course he's got 5 assists for the season. And then 5 assists puts him in the 88th percentile. And for expected assists with 4.72 is in the 92nd percentile. He's made 759 successful passes, that's in the 99th percentile. And he's in the 94th percentile for chances created with 45. He's that sort of player in the number 10 position who likes to roam around, try and influence the game as much as possible. And I think the passing stats as well as the other stats to come definitely prove that. Moving on to possession now, he's 128 duels, which is in the 92nd percentile. He's took a whopping 1,472 touches within the 97th percentile. And of them touches, 131 are in the opposition box, which is 98th percentile. And he's that sort of nifty player in that middle of the park in the final third that wants to try and get them fouls. He won 45 fouls. And that puts him in the 96th percentile for that stat. Look at the defending, these sort of stats for an attacking midfielder is just mental. He's made 50 tackles, which is in 98th percentile. He's intercepted the ball 16 times, which is in 98th percentile. And he's in the 100th percentile for recoveries and possession won in the final third. He's made 151 recoveries and won the ball back in the final third 35 times. And for clearances in the 88th percentile with 23. And it just proves the brilliant asset at both sides of the pitch. Overall, he's that sort of player that roams around in midfield, he's got so much energy to give, and he's just such a brilliant player during a brilliant season. For West Brom, they need to have a strong midfield, so I've gone for Alex Mower. He's a brilliant player in that midfield, probably one of their best at the moment, and I think some of these stats back up how well he's doing despite being in a poor team. Moving on to passing, like I mentioned, despite being in a poor team, he's got some brilliant stats. He's in the 95th percentile for expected assists with 5.13, and he's made 1,332 passes, which is in the 94th percentile, and that percentage of 87.6 in the 91st percentile for that. He's in the 93rd percentile as well for chances created with 45. 44. And of them 44 chances, 7 have been big ones in the 95th percentile for that. And he's someone as well that'll drift wide and get some crosses in. 32 successful crosses, which is in the 92nd percentile. And he's someone who isn't afraid to get on the ball across 1,891 touches, and that puts him in the 93rd percentile. And he wins his fair share of fouls, of course 33, which puts him in the 90th percentile. And even the defending stats aren't awful, of course 84% for recovery, just 128. And he's won possession in the final third 10 times, which isn't bad for a holding midfielder. And that puts him in the 81st percentile for all midfielders. Of course, the first job that West Brom need to do to try and nullify us is control our midfield. And I think Alex Mowatt gives them a good chance of doing that. He's a brilliant player. And if they are to create anything, I think he'll be a big part of that. Now that I've told you one player from both teams you should be looking out for, I'm going to look at my predicted starting lineup. Of course, in that, I believe it is going to be Adam Davies after that win versus QPR. Of course, like I mentioned in the intro, Michael Cooper has a knee injury. He will be out for the rest of the season, I believe. So I think it will probably be Adam Davies that carries on in that goalkeeper spot, at least for now. I didn't watch the game in the QPR, so I can't say fully, but I think he did look a bit shaky despite a clean sheet. But we haven't got much choice. He's going to play regardless, so we've got to back him. At right back is a tough one. I think he will go for Sariki though. From what I've heard, Hoover did play brilliantly against QPR, but I think Sariki will come back in. I think it's one of them, once you're going to rest, you have to bring Sariki back into the team. Because he's so influential how he plays, especially down that right side with Andre Brooks. And I've got to say I'm a massive fan of him. He's one of my favourite players at the moment. And I hope we keep hold of him in the summer, because he's definitely one we need to look to build around next year. Because like I mentioned, despite being a right back, he's so influential going forward. Of course, Tanganga is the first centre back. He'll keep his place in the team. I think recently he's had a little blip, but he's been solid for the majority of the season. And he's one of them we might as well keep playing our strongest team, and I think Tanganga's definitely part of that. He's been such a solid signing this season. I know it cost a lot of money, but it's still been quality at the back. And even when we was struggling defensively, he was still a brilliant player. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with him next year, especially in a better team. I think we will stay unchanged at centre back, so Tyler Bindon is the second one. I mean, every week he just seems to have kind of leaps and bounds, doesn't he? He got a spot in the Championship Team of the Week last week. He's been brilliant recently. And it will be interesting to see if we're going for him in the summer or not. I think if Forest do stay, we've got a good chance of getting him in on a permanent, because I can't see them wanting to keep him on if he's in the Premier League. But I think with these performances recently, it's definitely worth having a look at in the summer at least. Because since he came back into the fold under Wilder, he's had maybe 1 or 2 bad games. And him and Tanganga have certainly got a brilliant partnership at the back. At left back, of course, is the informed Harrison Burrows. Of course, a couple of goals and assists recently. He's been absolutely brilliant on that left-hand side. In the absence of McCallum, he's really had to step up, and he's done exactly that, to be fair to him. And we're starting to see his best like he was last season, because he was absolutely brilliant in the 24-25 season. And it'll be a really interesting one next season when McCallum is fully fit again, who starts at the left-back position. Because I think both of them are too good to be backup. Both of them should be starters in this league. So whether one of them moves on or not, I'm not too sure. Burrows has had quite a poor season, but he's been decent recently, so hopefully he carries it on for the rest of the season. At right mid, I think he will bring Andre Brooks back in for this game. Chonk supposedly had a decent game at QPR, but I think Brooks will come back in for this game, to be honest. I think last weekend was a good chance to rest a few players, but back to it at Bramall Lane this weekend. And I mean, Andre Brooks had a brilliant start to 2026 so far, hasn't he? A few goals, a couple of assists. And his dribbling, especially in the last few months, has certainly improved. I mean, we've seen it in most games where he's not afraid to take on a man, of course, one-on-one. And 9 times out of 10, he seems to take it past him so easily. Like I mentioned about Sariki, hopefully we can keep hold of Andre Brooks in the summer, because I think he's the sort of player on that right-hand side you build the team around. And I've got to say, this season he's definitely had a breakout year. Last season he was decent, but this season he's been solid in that starting 11. I think he'll stick to this 4-4-2 system, of course the first midfielder being Sidney Peck. And my word, he's had a good few weeks, hasn't he? Of course the 2 games against Wednesday and QPR is absolutely outstanding in both. And he just seems to grow in confidence game by game. He just seems to get better every week. He just picks up the ball sometimes so effortlessly and just drives us forward a lot of the time. And because of parachute payments, we're going to lose a few players in the summer. Hopefully Peck isn't one of them, because my God, he's going to be so good in this league next year. He's the sort of player that can get you promoted. And not just his playstyle, his personality as well. He'll give everything for that badge. And he's that sort of wind-up merchant you want on your team, you hate to play against, but you love on your team. Of course, next to Peck is Jairo Riedewald. Got a solid 75 minutes against QPR. Of course, he's only just returning from injury, so he probably won't play the full match, probably about 75, similar to QPR game. But when him and Peck have played in that midfield, it's been ever so solid. And he's been such a brilliant pick-up on a free. Of course, he's with us next season as well. Whether he'll start or whether he'll be a sub next year, I'm not sure. But I think he's an absolutely brilliant player. I love him in that midfield next to Sidney Peck, because I think he's that sort of Sousa player that allows the other midfield to push forward a bit more as a box-to-box. And I think Riedewald as an anchor definitely nails that position down. On the left, I think Callum Aware will carry on over Gus Harmer. I think Harmer needs a bit of a rest, and I think Callum Aware has been brilliant recently. Of course, he got his goal to make it 16 goal involvements last weekend. And like I mentioned in that preview, looking at his stats, he's so vital at both ends of the pitch as well. Because like I mentioned, going forward, he's good at pressing and getting that ball in the final third. But he also does his bit going back for the team, of course, pressing them at the back as well. And he's a manager's dream in that midfield, the amount of energy he puts into the game. And he has really flourished this season in a struggling side at times. The first striker, I think, will be Tyrese Campbell, of course, after his goal against QPR. Of course, breaking that goal drought they had for a few months since that Wednesday game in November. And it's brilliant to see him back on the score sheet. Of course, he's worked so hard for it. And it was a brilliant goal as well against Cupra, an absolute peach of finish. And I think when he's on form, he offers so much to the team. He's absolutely brilliant. And I think he definitely does benefit from having a striker alongside him, of course, Patrick Bamford or Tom Cannon. And I think we'll see him carry on in the starting 11 once again this week. And then alongside him, I think Patrick Bamford will come in for Tom Cannon. Of course, Bamford, I say it every weekend, he's been brilliant since he signed in November. I mean, he signed in November, he's got 8 championship goals, which is more than some strikers have in a whole season. And he's been so influential to this rise up the table. Of course, he's not going to be playoff worthy, but we're going to finish mid-table or top half solid, I reckon. And his goals have definitely been a massive part of that. I don't think this game against West Brom should be too much of a challenge, but you never know in the Championship. But I think we'll avoid any upsets, make it comfortable with a 3-0 win. I think it was Patrick Bamford that grabs himself a double and Tyrese Campbell with the other. And I just can't see West Brom threatening us too much. And there we go, guys, that's my preview and prediction for the game today against West Bromwich Albion. As always, if you enjoy this sort of content, leave the video a like, drop me a follow. And of course, my match reactions and my player ratings, when applicable, are on the shorts page. I also upload them to my TikTok and my Instagram. If you're not following them by now, go follow in the caption. And if you're a Blades fan, let me know your score predictions in the comments and I'll see you guys in the next one.